VTT.
Hell yeah.
Self-hosting Foundry VTT in the cloud part 4. So, hi guys, so there's Sebastian with the last part of the tutorial. Today we will really install Foundry VTT. So if you made it this far into the tutorial, great to have you here. I hope you learned a little bit, and now we will be creating the droplet. We will use our domain to create a domain name, then we connect to the droplet, and we will start really installing after getting a little bit used to the command line and securing the server a bit. So we will be covering a lot of Linux today, and I hope I can explain many of the concepts thoroughly enough and correctly enough, because Linux is not my daily driver, it's still Windows, but I got around using that, and I guess you will too. So let's start very quickly. I do not want to recap everything we learned in the last session, but just to make sure that you're on the right track, I will create the droplet now, and you can follow if you're ready. So you can pause the video at any time to get up to speed, and otherwise just drop me a note if anything is unclear and if anything needs clarification. I will do a compiled follow-up video on you based on your questions and comments. All right, now I'm in Digitalocean. The domain has been transferred over. I will just create the very, very basic Debian 11 $6 a month droplet, no block storage, located in Frankfurt. We checked monitoring, and I added the VTT installer public key into the droplet. I will create one droplet and we name it VTT installer tutorial. I added a VTT tag here, and it's in the vtta.io project. So let's create that. Let's quieten our phone so we do not get disturbed. And let's wait for the droplet to be created. It will only takes a couple of seconds. So the first step that we'll do is that we will assign the final DNS name in order to start propagation, because that might take a minute or two, or sometimes even longer. I talked about that in the last video. So let's do that right away. And I will do just to make sure and see if propagation is really dependent on like the domain endings. I'll just select two of the domains that I have available for us to see if that makes any difference. So the droplet has been created already. The thing is running, and now let's assign the domain to it. And I'll be using oneshot-tavern.com and oneshot-taverne.de for just these things. And we will just create the saloon. I will remove that or edit the record to over here. There was already something running for that. So saloon oneshot-tavern.com and saloon oneshot-tavern.de should resolve to the newly created droplet. So we got that one here. And let's go over to the .de domain. Takes a little longer to load here for whatever reason. I've been having a little bit of internet troubles today. I hope everything will be all right now. So saloon oneshot-taverne.de will be used for this one too. So both domains should point to the same server. And if we open a PowerShell and see what's a propagation doing here, perhaps you do get different results in the end. So let's ping it. First we will try the oneshot-taverne.de, and that is not resolving. And if we use oneshot-tavern.com, that is working all right already. So we've got a way quicker propagation when dealing with .com domains versus .de domains. I experienced that when recording the last sessions, that .de tends to be rather slowish. That's probably because of our high bureaucracy level, I don't know. So there is a difference, obviously, because .com is working all right, and that we check that now, and I will continue to just use the saloon oneshot-tavern.com for the next steps of our tutorial. So what do we do then? We will create SSH config in order to be able to connect to this host more quickly. And as you remember, The SSH config is in the C user service .ssh directory. So let's bring that into play here, and we can see these are the public keys that we store, the private keys, and in this config file without file extension there are several like template connections that we can use to securely connect via SSH to our server without needing to specify the private key component and the IP address and or the DNS name. So that's pretty great to have. So we open that with code. That's my favorite text editor. We just copy one of those blocks and adjust it to our liking. We just need to make sure that the indenting is great. So this host starts at the first level at the way on columns number 0 or 1, depending on where you start a count, and the things that are related to that block are indented by 1 tab. So what we need is we set our oneshot-tavern.com, saloon oneshot-tavern.com, the thing was called. Let's just make sure. I will just copy all the stuff without needing to type anything. So that's to make sure that we do not make any typos. And we will authenticate as root, again, public key, and the FVTT tutorial private key will be used. And that's good. We will call that oneshot-tavern. So we need to have that as a distinct name between all those blocks. We need to supply a distinct name. With that saved, we can close the editor again, and we can open a PowerShell window by hitting the Windows key and typing power, and then as you can see, I tapped in power, and the suggestion was PowerShell was already highlighted, so I can start that with hitting the enter key, and we will SSH into oneshot-tavern. Okay, here again we got this fingerprinting. This host isn't known yet. Are you trusting this host? Yes, we trust that. Good. We are now on the Linux shell of this server, and one of the first things that we always do is like checking for updates, because we are using a package manager. We are logged in as root. So who am I says you are root. If you forgot dummy, it is displayed over here too. And we will be updating the just base packages here, and that's with the package manager apt. And first we will update the listing of all available software and their versions. And after running an update, we will actually upgrade everything that has some updates available. And it says, okay, these are the packages that we can update. Do you want to continue? And the Y is in uppercase, so if you just press enter, it will be used. And the no is a lowercase, though it's not the default, but you can make sure to do that by entering Y and hitting enter. Or just hitting enter, because as I said, it's the default, and that might take a little moment. You might wonder why other updates. I just installed this virtual machine. It's because Digitalocean provides several base images which will be deployed to create your new server, and those base images do not receive the updates every day, every hour, and this ecosystem is very lively and updates occur regularly. So the base image might be outdated. Therefore, we need to update it to be really secure and to use the latest version of all the included packages. This might take a moment, like perhaps a minute or two to complete. Sometimes you will get some dialogues where you need to confirm something, because some packages have config files that are already installed. And if you run an update on that package, it will ask you, hey, do you want to keep the config file that is supplied with the base image? Or do you want to grab the config file that comes with the updated package? And in that case, I would always use the file that exists here, because Digitalocean might have adjustments there. So I will always play it safe and use the existing one. But this is really on a package basis, and you need to decide which one is correct. And I do not have answers to all of these questions, because I just do not know enough about Linux to supply these answers to you. So installation finished, no errors reported. That sounds great, but I think we are not ready yet. Oh yes, we are. So great. that was out of screen. So we just created the base installation with all updates. And if we hit clear or type in clear and hit enter, we get a blank screen. Now let's get used about this Linux operating system for a bit, because most of you will be using Mac or Windows. There are several commands that are really vital to move around the file system. And the first one is ls, which stands for list. ls, and hitting enter, will list the contents of the current directory, which is displayed here. So this is the directory. No, it isn't. We can print the print working directory, pvd, like that. So the actual complete directory is /root. So we can change directories now with cd, change directory. So ls for list, pvd, pwd for print working directory, and cd for change directory. And we always need to add a space here, because Linux is really strict on file names. It distinguishes between uppercase and lowercase letters, something that Windows doesn't do, or Linux does it. So the file name called readme is very different to the file name called readme in lowercase letters. So you can create both of them at the same time on Linux, but on Windows it will just use one file for that. So let's change directories, and let's go up one level in hierarchy. You can see now here it says this tilde sign is the home directory, and this is the actual directory we are in. So if we print the working directory, it says you're at the root, the very most top level directory of the file system on a Linux. And if we hit ls here, we can see there are different kinds of directories here. So this is really the root of everything. And the directories that we will be working with is home, the home directory for user directory. So user, how's it called? User directories is great. So every user receives one directory where it stores his documents and everything, same as in Windows. We will be using something in etc. So it's basic configuration thingies in there. And we will be using the root, because in this tutorial we were sticking to using the root user. Now, a short disclaimer. Normally it is advised that you create a different user and connect from your workstation to your Linux running in the cloud with this user, and then switch, if necessary, to a root user context to execute system level commands. This is in theory really, really great to do. Now, I do not suppose that we do that here. We will be sticking to the root user to get you started. And if you want to know more about that topic, about security and best practices, feel free to dig around in the internet, because this topic is really huge. And I cannot create a crash course on Linux and stuff, but I will bring you up to speed with the basics. So yes, I would advise on using a second user, but for this context, getting started with Foundry VTT on Linux, having the root user is great, because we secured the login and the access to the server by public and private key. And on top of that, we added security by using a passphrase on the private key. And that should be golden for this use case. Feel free, security is an endless topic, and you always can become more secure. So again, we will be using the root, which is the home directory for the root user, extensively in this tutorial, and that's about it. Okay, now first things first, what are we gonna do? The first thing that we do is we install a firewall, which is called the Universal Firewall, UWF, to just make it a little bit harder to malicious users to try to connect to a server. So we apt install UFW, the Universal Firewall, and that's about it. Configuration for this firewall is located in etc UFV. So we change into /etc UFV, and let's have a look at that. So we got some applications, and if you go here, we can see some applications do have templates. Like for example, if we run a mail server or a web server, then there are configuration files for that. But we will create just our 3 things that we need to connect to this server in the end. The first port that we need to have open is port 22, because that's the SSH port. When we close that port, we cannot connect with SSH. The second ports will be the web server port. That's port 80 for HTTP and 443 for HTTPS. So regular hypertext transfer protocol and secured hypertext transfer protocol. That are the only ports that we will have and remain open on this server, and that restricts the attack vectors on our server quite significantly. So what we will do is we say we allow UFW allow and then 22 TCP, so port 22 with the TCP protocol, and we have that, and then we just allow a 80, that is the HTTP port /TCP, and I don't know why it's not scrolling here, that's a bit annoying, 443 TCP. So you might be wondering, why do we need the 80 TCP if we in the end would have SSL encrypted only? So why do we not have only the 443 TCP port open? That is because the Caddy server requires port 80 to actually refresh and create the initial SSL certificate. For a short moment in time, we need to enable traffic through the unsecured HTTP port. And if we close that down, Caddy has difficulties creating the SSL certificates for us. So yes, we need that, but we will not use it. We will only use 443 secured HTTP in the end. But that's great. And what we need to do, we need to enable the firewall to be actually running. Right now it's just installed and we configure it, and it says, okay, this command may disrupt existing SSH connections. Do you want to proceed? Yes, we want, because it will not actually disrupt our SSH connections. The firewall is active and enabled on startup. Great. So that's a big part in securing this server. Like what we did right here is, first you need our private key to actually access the server with SSH. And for all means, all other ports are now shut. So we've built a wall around the server with 3 holes. One for SSH, which you need the private key for to use, and one for HTTP and HTTPS. That's pretty okay, pretty secure for just a web server, which is what we are installing here. So that's good. Good enough on the security page. So again, we learned the commands cd for change directory, ls for list the contents of a directory, pwd print working directory, it is also where am I right now in the directory tree, and I think that's about it. cd change directory for changing into directories. And now I will show you a quick tip. If you had cd without arguments and hit enter, you are going to your home directory. So that's the shortcut. Remember that. And then we can get started with installing the rest of the software already. So let me open up my installation protocol to not forget anything. And let's start with the first component. So we identified 3 components. We need node.js, we need Pm2, and we need the Caddy server. So let's bring that up to front. And with Foundry VTT, we move to back. So let's start with installing node.js. And when we look at Foundry in the knowledge base, we can see the installation guide. And down here, it says installing node.js and hosting dedicated server with node.js. So somewhere here, it says, let me search for that. I just found that when preparing this session. So somewhere in this text, it says, here it is, please use Node.js version 14 or newer. So we can go to nodejs.org, and when you do that, you see this tiny little page. It will detect that I'm currently running Windows and says, hey, please download Node.js for Windows, but that's not what we need. So we hit the downloads, and here that's the first decision we need to make. LTS stands for long-term support. So that's the version that you can install, and you've got, I don't know, I think 5 years of support. So if you install that, you get 5 years of security updates, and then you need to move up the ladder, or you get to install the current version of Node.js, which is Node.js 17, and LTS is 16. So Foundry needs version 14. Version 16 is a currently recommended installation base for everything, and the latest version is 17. I would recommend going with the LTS. But you can see we need to install Node.js via package manager. We installed all the software with apt. So let's click that, and let's select Debian and Ubuntu-based Linux distributions, and we can see that, okay, Node.js does not provide us with an actual installation binary, but NodeSource does. So let's head over to NodeSource. It's hosted on GitHub. And if we scroll down a bit, we can have the Debian Ubuntu-based distributions installation instructions. So here we are. It's for Node.js 17, 16, 14, which is required for Foundry VTT and up. So Node.js 12 would be too old. We can either install this, or this. And as I said, LTS version is Node.js 16. We will install that. So what we need to do is we copy one of those commands and we execute them. So Control-C to copy that. That's the next trick. If we are in a shell, we can right-click within the shell to copy or to paste the contents of our clipboard into our shell. So right-clicking, okay, that's a good example. So as you notice, there was one selection here. If I select anything here and then right click, that is pasted into, so the first right click copies into clipboard, the second right click paste is that. Okay, kind of command. So I had a selection here like that, just one thing, and when I hit right click, it copied the blank space. So let's head back to the Node.js installation instructions. Again, copy everything, right click, copy, head over to our shell, and make sure, again, we have selected something. Oh, it is getting annoying. Okay, now we right click. Oh. Okay, right click, copy, go to shell, make sure nothing is selected, right click to paste. So good. So that's basically downloading an installer script from NodeSource and running it automatically for you. You can always intercept or look at what is the content of this file to see what it is doing. But NodeSource is really highly reputation. It has a great reputation, and you can execute that without worrying. After installing, basically preparing the install, we can use apt to install Node.js. So we do not need to copy that. We know about that command already. So let's apt install Node.js. That's what it's called without the dot here. So yes, we want to install that. And it will get the sources directly from NodeSource. If you can see here, get deb NodeSource node 16 for Bullseye, which is Debian 11. And it will update and install it. So we can now run Node.js scripts. And if we run node version, it says version 16.13.0 is installed. That's what we wanted. So Node.js is installed. Let's close this window. The next step is installing Pm2, the process manager that will run our Node.js applications. Okay, let's use Google Pm2 install, and it will bring us to the quick start, and there it is. We will use npm, which is the Node package manager, to install Pm2 at the latest version and globally. So that's a good thing. Then npm will be available for us globally, and again I selected that F, so that was copied. I don't know, normally I do not have that many issues, but when I Now the N is selected. I'm kidding too much. Okay. All right. Here we go. This is embarrassing. Sorry, guys. So now we install PM2 at the latest version globally, so we can run PM2 from wherever, not only from a certain directory. Great. So new patch version of npm is available. We can do that. So run npm install g at the version. Here, let's do that to keep everything updated to the latest version number. So you will normally use npm to run the libraries when you're coding in JavaScript for the server, so node.js for the server. You can use npm to install different packages and libraries and everything, but it's used for install everything that you use globally here too. So PM2 is installed globally for us. We use npm for that, and npm said, hey, I've got an update available, so why not installing it? We will not be using npm from now on, but yeah, for removing an error message, it's always good to be at the latest version. Great. So we got that. PM2 is ready for us. That's okay. The other thing that we do is we will instruct PM2 to run at startup. So PM2 startup will write some configuration to our system and will make PM2 start when the server boots and look at the list of processes that should be running and start them. So that's great to have. PM2 is now set up for us too. So bam, done. Now go to Caddy. Caddy says it's available at caddyserver.com, the ultimate server, enterprise ready open source web server with automatic HTTP. I thought this is really cool. So let's say download, and it says, what is that? Let's have a look at how Caddy is actually installed here. Quick starts, getting started, install. Let's look at install. We got Debian here. So Debian, that's cool. We are using Debian. So let's look at installation instructions for Debian. Oh, so many commands. We will copy them one by one, Control-C, and then be annoyed that we have selected, oh no, nothing selected. Great. So first, we will install some additional libraries that is used for Caddy, or Caddy requires to be enabled to run. For example, apt transport HTTPS to have the ability to transport stuff and data with HTTPS and other things. So we got that. Then we will download the first key for validating that we are using the correct installation source in the end. So we got a key ring, which will take care of that for us. And finally, we will be adding the repository from Caddy to our installation sources so that we can actually install Caddy. So these are preparations. Get a list where we can get Caddy from, make sure that we validate that no one with the installation sources and everything is all right, and then we can start the regular Debian installation by updating this package list locally and then install Caddy. So we do not need to copy that. We know how to do that. So apt update and then apt install Caddy. So we got everything we need on that front too. We got all the things that we need installed, and we can actually install something. Isn't that cool? Good. Great. So what do we need to do? We need to actually get the final binaries from Foundry VTT now. And for that, we will prepare the file system a little bit. So when we look at, we are in the root directory right now, and we will create a Foundry VTT server where all our servers will be stored. And let's call it Foundry. So mkdir is make directory called Foundry within the local directory. So we can list the directory and add this dash ASL. These are parameters to change the actually output formatting. So instead of just displaying the name, it will give us some additional details. So the name Foundry is a directory, This is a directory, the .ssh directory. Hey, we know that from Windows. We created that in a user profile directory also. So there you can already see it's not so different, Windows and Linux. We got a Pm2, -Pm2. So all the things with a dash are basically hidden directories. That's why the ls command without parameters does not display them. But the ASL displays it, what kind of directory, what are the permissions and file sizes, and please display everything, even the hidden ones, so we get way more output when providing this as additional parameters to the list command. Okay, we got the Foundry directory. Let's head over here. And what I do is now I make a directory because I want to run a saloon at oneshot-tavern.com here. So just to, even if I have only one server, I like to create a structure that makes it easy for me to find stuff again. So I will create a saloon oneshot-tavern.com. And within that, so we change into this directory, we create two directories. One binary directory, which will contain the Foundry installation resources, and a data directory, which will be mkd and not cd. It does not exist already. So we have those, the user data directory and the binary. We will be updating that regularly if we change the Foundry VTT version. And within the data directory, everything is stored. That's the user data directory and the configuration files for the Foundry VTT server. Great. With that in place, we need to download the binary. So we change into the bin directory. And you can download the binary on a very, very easy way. So you go to the foundryvtt.com page and to the purchase license. And down here you got the download source, and instead of just downloading it, first select Linux node.js because that's the one that we want to install, and you select the version that you intend to run. So I will be using the recommended release there, and we click the timed URL button once and says temporary download link has been copied to the clipboard. It's valid for 5 minutes. And now with the clock ticking, we head over to our shell again. And we use the curl command. So curl makes HTTP requests for us. And we say, whatever you get when running this curl command, we will save that as foundry.zip. So output file -o is foundry.zip. And then that's important. We add a quote and hit the right mouse button to insert the link that was copied in our clipboard. And we close that with a quote. These quotes are important. And we hit enter, and we can see that curl is now downloading our Foundry zip file and stores it in the current directory. And there we go. It's real quicker than from my local machine, so the connection speed on this Droplet is excellent. And if we look at that, we can see Foundry zip is installed. So let's unzip it, but first we need to install an unzip utility. So apt install unzip will help us there. That's not installed per default. And with that installed, we can actually unzip foundry.zip into the current directory. And we can see all the .js files, HTML files, HPS, the header bars. So there's basically templates for displaying HTML. Everything over here, .js, a whole bunch of JavaScript files have been installed, and multiple assets like images, WebP as an image format, everything has been installed into resources, app, and so on. So if we go here, let's clear that. Let's have a look at what it looks like now. So we are in the bin directory where the Foundry source code is now located, and we got the Foundry zip, which we can now remove by calling rm for remove, and we start typing FOU, and then we hit the tab key, and that is it tries to automatically guess what command and which file do you mean. So here we got foundry.zip and Foundry VTT, so it doesn't know what to replace here. If we help him a bit and says, okay, the next letter is a dot, and if we hit tab again, it will complete the command to the only option left, so Foundry zip. So we can remove this Foundry zip to free some space, which we can then later use for battle maps or other assets. So that's all. Now we cleaned up the download, we unzipped the download. Great. That's all what we need right here. And then we go up one directory again to the actually say a saloon oneshot-tavern.com directory, and this is the data thing here, and here we start configuring Pm2 to actually run the process later on for us. So we will start Pm2 and we say please initialize that, and what it does is it creates an ecosystem config file for us, and we need to adjust it for a bit. But it's way easier to work with Pm2 in the end by having this file. So let's start editing. And editing files on Debian is I use Nano as a text editor. You can use whatever, but I would recommend using it. So Nano, and we start again ecosystem and hit tab, and it will always complete to this one because it's the only file that will match echo anything. So hit enter to actually edit that. With Nano, you only need to know a couple of shortcuts. You will have Control O to write the changes to made here to the disk, and Control X for exit the editor. Everything else is really self-explanatory almost. So what we need to do here to understand what that is, we've got these brackets. This is a block, it starts here and it ends here. This is JavaScript code actually, .js ending. So we need to adjust that. And the apps is an array of apps that are run here. And per default, it says, okay, there are two apps. Again, this is a block starting here, ending here. And this is another block. So an array, just a list of blocks in this case. And for our needs, we just need one block. So we will remove everything from that to that. And this is done by going here with a cursor, with down cursor, and just hitting the delete key until we have deleted everything that we need. And make sure to just remove that bracket, but this square bracket we need. And we will remove this comma in the end. So I removed that, I will replace it. So we got an array containing one block. That's all we need. We do not need all these. This is just an example of what you can do with Pm2, but we do not need that. So we go to this line, and if we hit Control K, we can cut things into our clipboard, and we never paste it, we actually delete them. So I'm holding Control now, and I'm hitting the K key. Oh my god, sometimes English is really hard. The K key repeatedly to delete the line that the cursor is currently in, and that's about it. Go up one, and here we go. So that is something that we need. We do not need the watch line, so let's delete that already too. Good. It says script index.js. That's not the script we intend to run. So this is in quotes, in single quotes. The script that we intend to run is located in bin, resources, app, and it's called main.js. I know that by heart because I did that so often. I just need to make sure that I do not write these resources wrong. So let me check that for a second. Let's go to SSH. One shot tavern, I think what it's called. Okay, that's good. Foundry. And then saloon. Oh, I forgot about all this stuff. Bin, resources, app. So that's the directory that we need to paste here. I totally made that completely wrong. So let's ramp up the font size here a bit. So that's the real path that we need to use. I selected and copied that into the clipboard, and I'm right clicking here to paste that into the correct path. And now let me think a bit. Okay, here we do not need to specify the full path to the script because magic. we say bin resources app main.js. That was completely correct, but we specified the current working directory, and that's this one over here. So please start from this directory, the script that is located in this directory, and that's what we want. So we go to root, foundry, saloon, one-shot, tavern.com, and within that folder, there's a subfolder bin, there's a subfolder resources, there's a subfolder app, and within that folder, there's a script file called main.js, and please run that. Wow, that was quite something to remember. The other thing that we need to remember that there is an args array. So we can provide command line arguments, again, in quotes or double quotes. It doesn't really matter. It's JavaScript. It's almost the same. And here we can specify additional command line arguments for our server. Should we do that here? We should do that for one and one parameter only. And that is --data, capital P, path. And that is, copy that here, copying and pasting data. So as you remember, we got two paths here. Or let's open it up in parallel, because we are super great. So we got the bin directory containing the scripts and the data directory containing the data. So the data path, the user data path, is /data. And that's all we need here. So we save that with Ctrl-O. We want to write that to this one, and we hit Ctrl-X to exit the editor. If we cat, I don't know what that stands for, but we display the content of a file. Ecosystem tab, we can see, okay, that's saved correctly. We got just an apps with one block of application that we want to run, and we want to run from the current working directory here. We want to run this script and provide this command line parameter to it. And that's it. That's what we want. Should we try it? We should try it. So we can just pm2 start, and with an ecosystem file in the current directory, it will read that and it will start the script file that we specified here. And we can see that we haven't supplied a name for that. So it's version 0.8.9. That is because in the bin resources app, there it is. There's a package.json file, which is basically configuration for Node.js script. And here we can see it has a version 0.8.9. So that is displayed on Pm2. And we see it's online. It doesn't resource any CPU or memory resources of significant value. And that's about it. It's running. Let's have a look at it. So if we get, say, Pm2 list, or just, wait, Pm2. Pm2 will give us some basic help, and we can use Pm2 Examples to look at some examples. And here we get a list of what you can do. Pm2 ls or list will just display the process list. We can delete an application, we can stop, start, or restart an application, and we can have a look at the logs, Pm2 logs for process ID 0. So 0. And it will give us the logs of the current running Foundry VTT server, and says, so it listens on port 30, and we can see here, and we copy that into our clipboard and hit Control-C for stop the process, cancel, probably cancel. We can cat the output of this one, and will give us the complete log of everything that Foundry VTT logged for us. Okay, now we know how to view the logs, but we need to keep the logs from filling our hard drive and halting our server, because no disk space is necessary. And we can use something that is installed within Linux. It's called log rotate. And we can look if we have got that installed, log rotate. And yeah, we got it. Okay, we just need to configure it in order to actually take care of the Pm2 logs for us. So we know that they are, and let me here, they are already per default in this directory. So we copy that into our clipboard here. So let's configure log rotate. And that is in here. So the configuration file for log rotate is an etc logrotate.d. D stands for daemon. Like a service in Windows, daemons are something that drive Linux even when no user is connected. So these are background scripts and background processes that are running constantly to take care of your system. And if you look at that one, we can see that there are several configurations for example, UFW. So UFW writes log files about blocked processes and blocked incoming connections, and log rotates is taking care of that. These log files do not grow so enormously that it will actually hold our system. And we will be adding something to this list of applications, and we will just create a new nano configuration by using our text editor. So everything is based in text files and configuration files. You will use nano for so many things when dealing with Linux. So we will create a Foundry configuration over here. And there's not so much that we need to specify here. We will insert this path, and we will say, please address everything that is in this directory ending with log. And now we open this braces again to specify what should be done here. We just hit tab and says, okay, every week, so it should run weekly, you will rotate the log, and rotation means start a new log and rename the old log with a suffix, and do this 3 times only. If we have a 4th log file, delete the oldest one. And we say each log file should be 10 megabytes at max until rotation takes place. And yes, why not? Compress that, please. Create an archive for these logs, because we can save disk space for a little bit. And we say delay compress to only compress the older ones and not the latest one. And with that, we Control O, write that out to Foundry, and we should be good. Log rotate. Let's hit a dry run by using this Foundry thing. So what is here? Handling one log file. So there's one log, and it would repeat this 3 times. So 3 rotations. Empty log files are rotated, old logs are removed, considering main arrow log, so that's good. Creating a new state. Log does not need rotating, log size is below the size, so 10 megabytes, it's less than 10 megabytes, nothing needs to be done. And the main out log is handled too, so our configuration is super great. So that's all we need. We just edit a file and paste this contents in it, and log rotate will make sure that the logs will not grow beyond, 3 times 10 megabytes plus the current log, at most 40 megabytes, under 40 megabytes. That's good. So here we go. That's all we need to do on the Pm2 side. Now we got Foundry running. If we look at the Pm2 ls, we can actually list the process number 0, Pm2 show 0, to get a little bit more information about that. And we can use Pm2 monitor 0 to actually get the log file and some additional things. So we see that heap size is at 88%, that's okay. Memory usage is 77 megabytes. CPU is basically nothing, because we had just started the process, but nobody's using it. So Foundry actually just waits at that point in time. And here will be displayed the log files of things that are currently happening. It's empty because nothing is happening. So good. We got that going for us. And now we need to make sure that we can actually connect to that. And how we do that? If we look at the log file here, we can see that it will listen to port 30,000 on this local server. But if you remember, we enabled the firewall only on 3 ports. That is HTTP, HTTPS, so 80 and 443, and port 22 for SSH. So port 30,000 is closed. So we need to configure Caddy next to translate ports or requests incoming through HTTPS 443, forward it to port 30,000 locally, and send the response back to the user. That's what we do now. And that's pretty easy. We can see on the Caddy documentation page, let's try to ramp that up so you can read that easier. We can see quick starts reverse proxy. That's what we need. That's great. So we can run these things in our terminal to create a reverse proxy to the IP address 127.0.0.1. That's the local computer. That's an alias IP address to localhost, if you have seen that already, on port 9000. So we can use that. Or we can use a Caddy file. That's basically a configuration file. And the configuration file is super easy here. So that's very, very nice. Let's have a look at what Caddy created for us when it has been installed. So let's Control C here. Let's go to etc Caddy and hit tab. And let's clear that. And let's have a look at the file contents. It's basically empty, just one Caddy file in here. So let's have a look. Let's open it with our nano editor. And we can see this is a documented Caddy file. So all these things beginning with a pound sign are comments. It's a little bit gray out. That's good. Oh, let's do not delete the comments. We can see that there are blocks with the brackets here. We know about these already. So it starts here and it ends here, and everything inside it is applied to this block. So what it states here, it says listen on port 80, which is HTTP. Then serve everything that you can find at the USR share Caddy to the user. So let's have a look at what is happening here. Let's try that. If that is true, then Caddy is running and should display something. If we hit saloon1shottavern.com, it doesn't do anything at all. Why? Good question. Because it's using HTTPS by default. Let's change that to HTTP. And indeed, so HTTP port 80 is listening, and it says Caddy works. So this web page is located in this directory and is being sent as a response to the request to HTTP saloon1shottavern.com. Because Caddy obviously is working. But this is not the configuration that we really need. So let's adjust that. First, now let's configure Caddy to use our domain to supply SSL encryption and forward any traffic it receives on port 443 to our Foundry server listening for incoming connection on port 30,000. And if we go to etc Caddy, we can see that there is one file. It's a Caddy file, and it's the options file for the Caddy HTTP server. And we just remove that because we are creating our own. So let's create our nano Caddy file and open up a text editor. And it's easy as that. So we can specify the domain that we want to listen to. So it's saloon1shottavern.com. And we open and close the bracket to begin a new block. And what we supply here is TLS, so SSL encryption. Please use vttassets@gmail.com. So we specify an email address so that the Let's Encrypt or Zero SSL providers that will actually create the SSL certificates for us will have some email address to give you, like, your certificate is expiring, please renew. But Caddy manages for all of that. Still, they need some kind of email address here, Please use your own, do not use mine. But yeah, we need something like that. And the other thing is that, and that's as easy as it can get, we can see it's a reverse proxy, and please forward everything you receive to the local host or currently this Linux and to port 30,000. So it will receive traffic on basically .443, so it's HTTP, but let's leave that away, and forward everything to port 30,000. We save that and close it, and service Caddy reload, and reload the Caddy service. And let's see if that changed anything. Let's look at the server status here. Okay, something is happening. TLS issuance Acme, so they are just creating certificates, and here certificate obtained successfully for Selene one.7.com, releasing log. That's awesome. Let's go over here, let's create a new window, and let's try to see if we got a response. Et voila. So we got our Foundry server running on our cloud, securely encrypted at Saloon one.7.com without any ugly port, and we just need to supply a license key to get up and running. And with that, I think we have finished much ground today. And in the last part of the tutorial, I will talk about two topics: backing up our Foundry VTT server, and I will show you as a bonus thingy a very nifty utility that I'm working on that will make this installation an absolute breeze. Stay tuned, and thumbs up if you liked the tutorial session so far. I need some feedback from you guys. Take care.